This is Fleetwood, Pennsylvania. It's a small industrial town. Not quite sure how many people. It's pretty small. But this town has an incredible history in American manufacturing, and actually in manufacturing ultra high quality luxury goods. The most famous thing that came out of Fleetwood, it's not Fleetwood Mac, it's the Fleetwood Cadillac, because that was made at the factory next to where I'm standing, Fleetwood Metal Body. About 6 years ago, I realized that we needed to have a much larger space to work in. So I started looking around. I drew a circle, 30-minute drive with the mill at the epicenter. And I knew that towns like Kutztown and Fleetwood, closest place would be Allentown, Pennsylvania, that these towns had amazing early industrial architecture, which I thought would be the ideal place to locate Oswald's Mill Audio. Fleetwood Sound didn't exist yet. And I remember very well coming down this alley, and I looked at this building, which looks kind of decrepit on the outside, but it's in very good condition on the inside. And I looked through the window, and it was just filled with, it was a warehouse, it was just filled with boxes and shit. And I thought, that's a really great one. But it was occupied. It turned out it was for sale, but the for sale sign, it's such a big property, it was on the other side where the actual correct address is. We'll go and take a look at that. So we ended up buying this property, 3 buildings. Freight train is coming. I hear it. Comes by here, so it's not the quietest place, but the freight trains are pretty, they don't come that often. And actually, most of the world's prune juice is made at the factory right here, the Sunsweet factory. Here comes the train. This is real American stuff. Hey, turn around. It's my neighbors. So we have 3 buildings. This is building 2, actually it says building 3. And I'll take you to building 3 first. So this is Fleetwood Sound OMA building 3. And this has an interesting story because the property has 3 buildings and 2 of them were in moving condition. This one was just boarded up, dirt floor. We had to do everything, but we wanted to keep it really original looking. And this actually is completely a fabrication because while it looked a bit like this when we got it, there was no structure, and so we had to build all this for real. And we used old wood and materials to get that feeling. So what is this? Because obviously as an audio manufacturing company, this looks quite domestic. Well, what we wanted to do was to create a space where we would have our studio, where we would be able to do photography, where we would have listening and non-critical listening, and events. And so it's worked out well for that. And it's also become a repository, since I'm doing a lot of construction at the mill, for some of the pieces that we've acquired, which are the reference collection for OMA and Fleetwood Sound. And reference means that, we refer, especially I refer to these things and how they sound. These are primarily actual Williamson, not ultralinear, but Williamson amplifiers from the 1950s. Some of these are from the 1940s. This might be from the this is 30s. This is actually a triode amp. It's not a Williamson amp. These are so rare, these Electro-Home, and I'll do videos on these things. I'm not going to spend the time now. The Electro-Home amps, there might be 100 of those in existence. These are, Lowther made amps. You may know Lowther. It's a speaker manufacturer, and I'll show you some Lowther stuff. These, There can't be too many of these in existence. And when you hear these, it's shocking because where sound has gone, it's just gone down a toilet in the demands for power and what that's done for speaker design. But that's not the point of this video. I want to show you the space because it says something very important about what we're doing, which is that audio is part of living. That means lifestyle, how to give style to life. And the word style is very, very interesting. It goes stylus, the thing that inscribes, that marks. So for me, having things, you know, and we use these in photography. I think we did the DeVille with one of these African tent poles. That's what these are, house poles. Having things that are beautiful, that resonate, you know, with what we do is very important to the way I see the whole relationship. It's like an ecosystem. And what we're trying to do is to make the most beautiful sound, put it in the most beautiful, you know, physical manifestation, loudspeakers, amplifiers, turntables, and then, you know, unite that with the other things that you need to have, you know, in a room. For example, seating, tables, other surfaces, etc. And here, actually, we have a really interesting setup where we can evaluate things in a way that I have not seen any other audio manufacturer do. So what do I mean exactly? Okay, we have here the OMA Mini loudspeaker, for example, and the Fleetwood DeVille SQ loudspeaker. Sometimes we have other speakers and things we're prototyping, but these two you probably know because we make them, they're products, and we have not a fancy turntable, an entry-level turntable, but back here we have a switching thing, which I don't think you can get to, but this allows us to, just by pushing some buttons, there's a whole row of, you know, ranks of connections here, which can be switched instantly. And so this amp, which is one of our tube amps, but it could be a solid state amp, for example, or another amp under evaluation, that we can switch back and forth between, say, what we make and some of the vintage things that you see here, actually all the vintage things that you see here. And why would we do that? Because actually, what's here are some of the absolute greatest speakers ever made, but they're really obscure and rare. For example, in here is the RCA LC1. This is an LC1A. These were the domestic cabinets. This was the speaker, for example. You'll see pictures of Elvis in the studio or Chet Atkins with their heads stuck in the speaker. It has these bumps. It's really very distinctive looking. You probably see one in the footage of the mill. This is a Decca corner horn. Later when we're on the other side, you'll see the back, because here it doesn't look like a loudspeaker at all. Another LC1. This is one of the most significant things that we have. This was called the Voigt Lowther domestic corner horn. This is so rare that I had never seen one in person, and I never thought I would. This was designed by Paul Voigt, who missed getting the patent on the moving coil loudspeaker, I believe, by only a few days. And it was that patent was awarded to Rice and Kellogg of Western Electric and Bell Labs in the 20s. Paul Voigt was an absolute genius, one of the greatest audio designers of all time. This is plaster. This is a Tractrix horn, and there's a single Lowther driver, and I'm going to show you that in a moment, stuck in the bottom of this. This was made in the late 1930s. Then there was World War II. Obviously, England was, you know, blasted hard. It went back into production in the 1940s, and then, of course, it disappeared. Why is this so significant? Well, this may very well be the first real hi-fi loudspeaker ever made that was freestanding. At that time, speakers were stuck in radio consoles and whatnot. I'll do a video just on these, but what I want to show you is like all these things which are real things, they work. This is a extremely rare thing. It went with this Lowther domestic corner. This is a Lowther Voight PX25 triode amplifier, which when it's connected to this, and this is actually the driver that goes in, this is a field coil Lowther driver. So, when you hear this thing with the right material, I wouldn't be playing techno or hip hop on this. But when you hear this with somebody singing, or not large scale orchestral stuff, it's so good that you just wonder what the fuck happened to audio, in the 85 years, 86 years since this thing was made. Here, well, there's two of these. These are Vitavox corner horns. This one was made in Hong Kong for some wealthy Chinese clients, so it had a carved front. Again, these are completely original, and a very, very significant design right after World War II that virtually no one knows about. This precedes the famous Bose speaker, the 901. There was a thing at the time about creating omnidirectional. Actually, I shouldn't take it off of this one. I'll take it off of this one. That's cooler. This was designed, this is made by Citation, Stu Hageman. Again, plaster, again, allow the driver, and then the sound hitting the plaster and dispersing and going around the room 360 degrees. Well, omnidirectional. Original pair. These were incredibly expensive. So, you can see the Decca corner horn also has a rear firing speaker. Why we do this is because we want to know what our stuff sounds like against the best sounding stuff that's ever been made. And I've talked to a lot of magazine reviewers, I've talked to audio dealers, and I've talked to many collectors. And honestly, most of them have never heard like any of this stuff, certainly not all of this stuff, and being able to compare it pretty much like snap of the fingers is really useful for us to have a proper understanding about what's good, what's not. These are Brosiner corner horns. Another brilliant design by a great manufacturer that just disappeared. People don't know about Brosiner. And sometimes, a piece isn't really about the sound quality, but it's just about how it was made. This was so beautifully done, with the knobs, phenolic faceted knobs. The turntable was up here, and it's just an extremely classy, simple but sophisticated design, and that is an ethos that you just don't see anymore. So it's really, to me, about all of it. How does it sound? How does it look? What's the story? How does it relate to this earlier stuff, which was so great and then forgotten about? And in that way, hopefully we can, resuscitate it. That's how I see our project.